wonderful start to our morning, Sarah. Thank you. And now we will join together in worship. Feel free to stand if you'd like. You're also welcome to sit where you are, however you would like to express your worship this morning. We are alive, filled with your glorious light. Out of the dark, into your marvelous light. We are waiting with expectation. Spirit, praise us, come with you. Let the church arise from the ashes. Let the church fall to her knees. Let us be light in the darkness. Let the church arise. Let the church arise. Moving with power, bringing your name to the earth. Singing your praises, lifting up glorious songs. We are moving with His compassion. Spirit, let us with you. Let the church arise from the ashes. Let the church fall to her knees. Let us be light in the darkness. Let the church arise. Let the church arise from the ashes. Let fall to her knees. Let us be light in the darkness. Let the church arise. Let the church arise. Amen. Welcome especially to our visitors. Please take a minute to greet one another with God's love this morning. Hey, Jacob. Hey, Jacob. Jacob. Hey, Jacob. Jacob, come here a second. We're doing this in the key it's written in. For the things we've done, we sing together.
For the things we've done and left undone, for the ways we've wandered from your heart, forgive us, we pray. Forgive us.
That's the first time I ever had to raise the microphone. Good morning. Welcome to Wooster Mennonite Church, both to those present here and those listening from afar. This is a special Sunday. Twice a year, we designate a Sunday in the fall and a Sunday in the spring as Mission Sunday. Usually on these Sundays, we ask someone from outside of our congregation to come and share with us about the mission that is happening, a mission that is happening either locally or somewhere else in the world. But this Sunday, you are learning from 3 people in our own congregation who will be sharing about their experiences at the Texas border and the barriers that are in place to separate us from our southern neighbor, Mexico. There are all kinds of walls and barriers. Throughout history, there have been barriers and walls. Jericho, Berlin, the Great Wall of China, these are nothing new. There are walls to keep people out, walls to keep people in, walls to mark boundaries. Walls can be physical, man-made of things like brick, stone, metal, cement, wood, dirt, razor wire. Barriers can be natural, like mountains, deserts, water, like rivers, oceans, and lakes. In a different part of Texas than we were in is Big Bend National Park, and there massive canyons separate the US from Mexico. Walls can be verbal, emotional, mental. They can be perspectives, whether intentional or unawares. Could be a barrier created by anger or fear, words that disconnect, walls of misunderstanding, hatred, injustice, self-interest or hurt, protection. But when we consider the message of Jesus, he is seen as the one to break down walls and barriers, the one that challenges us to love our neighbors. Luke 10:27 tells us that Jesus said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." In Matthew 22:40, Jesus even says that all the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Recently, Kim and Jim and I availed ourselves of the opportunity offered by Mennonite Central Committee, Central States, to visit one of the most famous barriers of our time, the border wall that divides the US and Mexico. The boundary was established in 1848 after the Mexican-American War at the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, where a river, the Rio Grande, or as it's called on the Mexican side, the Rio Bravo, became the border between Texas and Mexico. Mennonite Central Committee is a nonprofit organization that has strived to share God's love and compassion through relief, development, and peace building for over 100 years. It began with the sending of food to families affected by war and famine in southern Russia, which is present-day Ukraine, and has grown into an international effort to bring care and long-term solutions to individuals and families across the globe. This is how MCC Central States described this border immigration learning tour that we took. The emphasis of the border immigration learning tour provided by MCC Central States is on learning, and as such, we make every effort to provide visitors with a range of opportunities to explore various social justice issues at the US-Mexico border. These opportunities include learning experiences, firsthand exposure, listening from organizations providing response, hearing from enforcement officials, and meeting individuals with diverse perspectives. The main focus of this visit is to learn and engage in discussions related to the complex issues surrounding the topic of immigration, which involves visiting the border wall, immigrant resource shelters, meeting with US officials, and traveling to key important areas in northern Mexico that have been affected by migration and displacement and the policies surrounding them. We urge participants to maintain a respectful attitude, keep an open mind, and recognize that their role is not to volunteer or provide assistance, but to listen, to learn, and to collaborate with local constituents in creating a more equitable community. I'm sure I speak for all three of us when I say that it was a very meaningful experience, and that MCC Central States did just what they set out to do. From getting to know the two leaders of our tour, you'll see their pictures later, Becky, who felt the call to move with her husband and 2 children to the Rio Grande Valley where the tour was located because she couldn't bear the thought that children were being separated from their parents at the border. And they left a comfortable life in Cambridge, Massachusetts, to do what she could. And to Abram, the other director, who had a life-changing experience while attending college in the Rio Grande Valley, when he heard the story of a young man named Joaquin Luna. Joaquin attended Juarez Lincoln High School in La Jolla, Texas. Joaquin took his own life after the failure of the DREAM Act, which would have given a pathway to citizenship to undocumented youth. He was from the Rio Grande Valley, where Abram grew up, and was the same age as Abram. At that point, Abram became interested in being involved in the challenges of U.S. immigration policies. In fact, it was while he was attending one of the legal trainings on immigration offered by MCC in Pennsylvania that he became interested in working with MCC. So on top of meeting Abram, meeting Becky, and getting to know them, we met lots of helpers, like, we're told in hard times, look for the helpers. Well, I'll tell you what, people stand up and help down there. And many of them with church affiliations, many of them Mexican, not just Americans, to meeting immigrants in the shelters in Mexico, and to hearing from the Border Patrol. I think all 3 of us left with a burden and a heart for our neighbors on both sides of the river in the Rio Grande Valley. I wanted to share a few words that attempt to sum up my experience that I wrote during this time in the Borderlands as I tried to make sense of all the experiences we had. Bewilderment at the border, many emotions, many who care. Bewilderment at the border, many needs, many options. Bewilderment at the border, no magic wands, but seeking my role. Will you please pray with me? Dear God, this morning, as we share about our experiences at the border, I ask for your Spirit to guide us. Give us all open hearts, hearts for our neighbors. We pray for those seeking a better and safer life at the border. We pray for those trying to meet the enormous needs at the border, and for those who make policies affecting immigration and asylum, that these would be more humane. We thank you for your love and care for each of your children. Help us to know how best to help them. Amen.
Thanks, Laurie. Thanks for that meaningful introduction to our time this morning. We're going to continue to partner with our friends in this worship service by singing. This one's in the Green Book called Sing the Journey, number 65. We'll do all 3 verses. You want to? Feel free to stand if you'd like. Mm-hmm. Ready? Okay.
The offering that is taken today will go entirely towards our mission budget. Mennonite Central Committee is one of the many organizations who will benefit from this offering. The offering plate is in the back of the sanctuary. Please pray with me again. God of extravagant mercy, with hands outstretched, you have poured out wonder and pleasure and delight, goodness and beauty and bounty. So take, so take these offerings, we pray, as our protest against all that is evil and ugly and impoverished, trivial and wretched and tyrannical in our world and in ourselves, that we too may be poured out for the world. Amen. So Jim and Kim and I are going to share about our trip. So have patience with us. It's a lot of information to cover, and it's hard for us to leave anything out. But our story is the story of 3 senior citizens who decided to take the MCC Central States up on their invitation to learn more about the work MCC is involved in at the southern border, particularly in Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley. And by the way, I won't say it this way, but down there they don't call it the Rio Grande Valley. They call it the Rio Grande Valley. So, my own history is that in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, I had signed up already to take a border tour and was really looking forward to it. The one I signed up for was with MCC Great Lakes, which is the area of the Mennonite Church that we reside in. And it was to be in Arizona, but the pandemic hit and it was canceled, which was super disappointing. The other thing that plays a role in all this is my son has lived on and off in Texas in the Rio Grande Valley, not the Rio Grande Valley, excuse me, Big Bend National Park. And I've been down there 3 times to visit him. And the first time was in 2001, January, I believe, or February, before 9/11. And at that time, there was really no border. People just walked back and forth. It was to me, like, it was lovely to see. Like, I don't know, some people, I don't know what they even considered themselves. When I returned in 2013, things had all closed. And even the little village across from the park that I had visited when I went in 2001, you couldn't get over there anymore, which is out in the middle of nowhere, but you weren't allowed to. And I think seeing the changes kind of started this little thing in me to care about how we treat our neighbors down on the southern border. I remember at the time that Kim had been interested also. I think it didn't work for her to go back in 2020 when I had signed up, but she always had an interest. And she actually, during the pandemic, did an online Borderlands Tour through Great Lakes MCC. And so when this opportunity came up again, I just happened to see it. I was thrilled, and even though it's not our part of the Mennonite Church MCC that was sponsoring it, I was like, I'm going. And Kim was definitely interested and urged Jim to come too, so that's our story. These are the things that MCC supports in the Rio Grande Valley. And this is our group, minus Abram, who was taking the picture. And this was right after we had come back into the U.S. from our second visit to Mexico. Everyone else in this group actually lives within the Central States area, representing the states of Kansas, Colorado, Oklahoma, and Iowa. Both Becky and Abram live in the Rio Grande Valley. Well, so here are Becky and Abram. On the left, you see Abram and Jim laughing. They were really having a good time. This picture doesn't even capture I have other ones where Abram's actually leaning over and he's so happy. We're hearing from someone that's sharing about their organization in storage units. So that's where that one is. And this is me with Becky. And we found out we had some similar roots, and if you ever want to ask me about it, I could tell you a little bit, but I won't go into that now. But neither of them are Mennonites or attend Mennonite churches, but they work for MCC, and they both are really committed Christians. And actually, I'll just mention before I go into that Abram is the Immigration Program Coordinator for MCC Central States, and Becky is the Borderlands Program Coordinator. And we were asked by them to focus on learning from the locals, the experts, those with boots on the ground. So Jim, Kim, and I left on separate flights out of Cleveland very early in the morning on Sunday, February 4th. And here you see my first view of the border from the airplane after leaving Houston. I'm wondering, can you tell which side of the Rio Grande is Mexico and which is the US? Right? It's just a river separating us. And here you see a map of the area we visited, which is called the Rio Grande Valley. McAllen is the airport we landed in. You can see just east of McAllen is a little town called San Juan. I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. We traveled across the bridge to Reynosa and Matamoros. Depending on where you read, the part of Mexico along the border is also considered the Rio Grande Valley. Over 90% of the region is considered Hispanic, Latino, 90%. One of the fastest growing areas in the US with over 1 million people, and one of the most densely populated areas of the Southwest. If you look at this map, I'm trying to show you where it sits compared to where a lot of the migrants are coming from. So if you look at the part of Texas along the border, you'll see Brownsville, Matamoros. You won't see where we stayed, it's not on there, but you can see how it would be an important port of entry for a lot of people, for both people in the Caribbean and Central America, South America. It's kind of the closest point to the US. It's also, if you can locate, Monterrey is considered the second largest city in Mexico, and so that plays a role in the attractiveness of the area we visited for people crossing the border. This is the hotel where we stayed, the San Juan Basilica Hotel, which is on the grounds of the Basilica National Shrine of Our Lady of San Juan de Valle in San Juan, and I showed you where that was. And San Juan is located about 20 minutes from the border. It's also the town where Abram grew up. So I will share with you about the first day and what it looked like. So this is us in the morning on Monday, heading toward the bridge to cross into Mexico. And this is the McAllen Hidalgo International Bridge. We were headed to Reynosa. So this is us. Pastor Morrow, who met us on the other side with this van that he had rented from a friend. You can't see his face in this picture. You'll see his face later. This is the van where he drove us around to the different shelters that we visited. And his goal was to show us what he and other helpers are doing to meet the many needs of migrants passing through, helping with food, supplies, and according to Pastor Morrow, helping the shelters to run smoothly. So up in the left-hand corner, you see Abram talking to us shortly after we arrived at the shelter. The shelter's name is Senda La Vida. 2 because, I don't know, I guess there's another one which we didn't visit, but what that means is path of life. I heard that it used to be a ball field. A lot of these shelters, they just had to come up with it. It's not like they had a place designated for them. If you look in the background, you can see the sign for Doctors Without Borders, and Jim took a picture of it down here. So they're active at these shelters. I think at this one they said they come a couple days a week. You'll hear a little bit more about that later. The picture on the right, Abram is showing us the water tanks up there. They supply water to the showers. There are sinks for washing, and further down in the little covered area is a kitchen with cooking places for people to cook, and they were cooking while we were there. A lot of people busy cooking. A lot of the infrastructure, and you'll hear more about this. Are you hearing me? I know I'm not talking into the microphone. Yeah? Okay, good deal. You'll hear more about it, but Solidarity Engineering. Okay. Solidarity Engineering is one of the main groups active in these shelters. Their goal being to make the shelters more livable. And so a lot of the infrastructure they put in, water tanks, and you'll see as we go along all the different things they have added. I guess one thing, and maybe you can see it here, is a good place to show you. You can go forward. See all the gravel? We heard that before we were there, I don't know how long ago, a lot of this was just dirt and mud. And so if you can imagine staying in tents after it rained or whenever, walking through here on, mushy dirt. In fact, I think you'll see in the video, isn't it one of the videos where she's knocking the mud off her feet? I think so. Anyway, this gives you just an idea of where people are living in these shelters. So at the time we visited, they said there were about 1,000 people, but the numbers were way down. So at times there had been thousands of people staying in these shelters. So here is a picture of some of the work that Solidarity Engineering has done in the camps. On the right, you'll see finished showers. So they, for privacy, they would put the plastic down. On the left, they're working on building more showers, so there's male and female. On the right, you see sinks. It's throughout the work they've done. On the left, you'll see one of the staff from Solidarity Engineering, and this is their storage unit. This is where they keep a lot of their things. And one thing I wanted to mention is well, maybe I'll wait a little bit for that. It was really orderly, I guess. It was really amazing. If you think of 1,000 people who have just come from all over the world with nothing, and the place was really orderly and pretty clean. I mean, you kind of have an idea that maybe that wouldn't work that way. But another thing we found out was that when Solidarity Engineering is putting in a lot of these structures, they actually use the skills of the migrants who often have many skills that are helpful. So this is under a tent. You can see why. There's a lot of electronics. Electronics are necessary because in order to check in to make your appointment with Customs and Border Patrol, you have to use a phone, and people cannot do it for you. You have to do it yourself. So people are charging their phones. This is also how they keep in contact with their family back at home and their family in the US, because many of them have contacts here in the US. So there's another example of water tank, and that one would be for drinking water. The others were for showers, things like that. So in this same tent, down in the right-hand corner, well, you can see us actually looking at the tank in the left-hand corner of that picture, is when, I must have skipped ahead here. Mennonite Anabaptist missions. Oh, I guess it says it right there. Okay, and have to look at my notes. So they are active, I heard, a couple days a week in the shelters. They stay on the US and come over during the day. Most of them make 6-month commitments to come. So on the bottom you see someone leading a class in English. On the left you see the playground, that another structure that Solidarity Engineering built there. What was fun was seeing a number of the people from this ministry jumping rope with the kids. There were a lot of kids. From that shelter, we traveled to the next one, which is called Camp Rio, and it is right on the banks of the Rio Grande. This one is much more primitive. At this point, it had less people. They said about 100. But again, this one had many, many more when the numbers are up. Solidarity is busy there too, but it is on the property, someone's property. So this is, Pastor Moreau said that he had asked this man to let migrants stay on his property. And so it's kind of an ongoing thing. He makes kind of a joke about it, that he has to keep asking if they can stay there. You see Pastor Morrow on the left, and the man from Solidarity Engineering is showing us some of what they've done there, which you can see in comparison is not the same as the other one, and you can notice that it's all dirt, so when it rains, it's going to be pretty messy there. In the bottom right-hand corner are showers. So she's looking at the shower. Okay.
First caught up with Erin Hughes a year ago. She told us about her all-female engineering team, Solidarity Engineering, and how they crossed to Reynosa to help migrants. At the time, she was struggling with her Spanish skills, but now with all the Haitians, it's Creole she says she needs to know. Nevertheless, she says the mission remains the same.
Our mission is to provide engineering solutions for people in crisis. If they are stuck in Reynosa with limited resources, limited shelter, limited water, bathrooms, Solidarity Engineering is there to help.
They started out in Matamoros, helping migrants at a river camp there. A year and a half ago, they began crossing to Reynosa, where now it is mostly Haitian refugees. They have built bathrooms and laundry facilities at 2 shelters where 4,000 migrants live. They also give out toiletries to 700 asylum seekers in a makeshift camp on the river that they call Rio Camp.
There's really, really limited resources there. It's on someone's private property. This guy has allowed hundreds of people to set up tents, and it's right on the river. So Solidarity Engineering provides porta potties there, cleaning supplies, sanitation supplies, hygiene products for the hundreds of people that are stuck living in tents at the Rio camp.
Right now, Reynosa is overflowing with asylum seekers, she says.
We're doing our best to provide enough bathrooms and water, but the people living on the streets are in dire need of help.
They have put in solar panels for cell phone charging stations. They teach physics to kids who play ice skating games on donated tablets. Their newest project is a community playground.
Chutes, ladders, lots of things for kids to climb over and play through. The theme of the playground is essentially that these kids can overcome.
In Hidalgo, Texas, across the border from Reynosa, Sandra Sanchez for Border Report.
So that gives you a little idea of the wonderful work they're doing. And on a side, the two women started this organization. They were both engineers. After Camp Rio, we drove around the block to Cocina El Amor, Kitchen of Love. Started and run by Sister Mary. You can see her in the plaid shirt and baseball cap. She offered services to her local neighborhood: food, clothing, Bible studies, activities for children, and church services. But when the migrant camp came in around the corner from her, she expanded her services to the migrants. While we were there, 2 Haitian migrants came in to pick up some food. This is an example of what she can offer. Jim took pictures of the boxes there. And the Camp Rio was mainly Haitians. There are a lot of Haitians right now, and in general, they said there are more Venezuelans and Haitians coming over through their area. It can vary, like where different groups come through, but there are people from all over the world coming through the border. From Mary's, we headed to Casa Lulu's, which is more of a house-type building. You can see the indoor courtyard. And this is where Doctors Without Borders send those too ill to stay in camps or who have significant trauma due to their experiences traveling to the border. Doctors Without Borders offers both medical and psychological help, and the doctors and psychologists are all Mexican. So Jim reminded me when we were going over this earlier that I should show you who Lulu is. Lulu is there in the courtyard telling us about our services. She is Mexican-American, but spends most of her time in Reynosa helping people at the shelter. And that is one of her helpers with her. I don't remember his name. Jim is going to tell you about the picture down in the corner.
So we were allowed to see some of the housing that took place, so we went up these stairs that are in the background here, and there's kind of like a dorm room up there, it's bigger than a dorm room, and had lots of bunk beds. All of the bunk beds were nicely made. I mean, it looked clean and wonderful. I mean, I'd be willing to sleep there. I shouldn't say it that way, I guess. But on the way back down the stairs, you'll notice that there's this table over here where there were some children. And that table is highlighted right here. And the interesting thing for me was that those children were playing Uno. You can't really see it from back there, but they're playing Uno, and I thought of my grandkids playing Uno, and they're just like my grandkids.
So Pastor Morrow drove us back to the bridge, showing us Reynosa's town square. I don't have a picture of this, which he said before the shelters was where hundreds of migrants were staying, just right on the square in Reynosa. As we crossed back across the bridge, we passed a line of asylum seekers waiting on the bridge to cross for their CBP appointments, the ones they do on the app to set an appointment to come over. So evidently, they have to wait until their time comes, and then they're allowed to cross. From there, we headed to the town of Hidalgo, which is right next to the bridge, where we ate lunch and then gathered at a park on the border for our first experience of the border wall. So here you can see us walking up to the wall. So this is just a smaller section. It's not a continuous wall of this nature. It's a wall, but it's not the 30-foot standing part of it. Go to the next one, yeah.
So if you want to get an idea of the height of the wall, you'll notice in the left-hand picture this horizontal bar that's across the wall. On the right side over here, you don't see that horizontal bar because it's up here. So the height of the wall is probably about 4 times the height of this guy who's around 6 foot here. So somewhere between 20 and 30 feet tall. To the right side of the wall over here, in the next picture, you'll see that there's no wall over here. There is a small chain link fence over here, but there is this cement wall that's roughly, again, 20 to 30 foot tall if you want to get through. There's a road, of course, running along the wall. Over here is brush. The river is over here somewhere, but there's no steel wall there. There's a cement wall, again, 20 to 30 feet tall.
So roads are required on both sides of the wall so that the Border Patrol can drive and patrol to make sure no one is getting over. You can see the razor wire. This is everywhere. You hear about it with Governor Abbott, but it's everywhere. It's on all parts of the wall. You can see it. The Border Patrol was stopped kind of near where we were, and you can see the razor wire all along there. I think it'll come up later. You'll see it in one of Kim's pictures, and there were even, this one's along the river, there were even clothes stuck on it. So when they swim across, they would take their clothes off that are wet and put them on the razor wire, and I think also used to protect themselves from the razor wire for those who were crossing the river. You can see in the upper left-hand picture that the ground is much higher to the right of the wall than the left. It's like a levee purposely made higher, both for flood control, but also so that they can make those walls that make it harder to get over. Our days usually ended with processing and dinner together. So Jim's going to talk about day 2.
So on day 2, we had wasn't quite as long as day 1 and not quite as tense as day 1. We went to 3 things. We were actually supposed to go to a detention center, and we did all the paperwork to get in, and then they had something going on and we couldn't get in the detention center. One of the things for me was that a lot of the people coming, I don't know how many, because we really didn't talk to the people all that much, are people of faith. And so some of them would take courage in passages like this from the Bible. The first thing we did on Tuesday morning was go to La Posada Providencia. La Posada means the inn, and Providential Inn. This is on the U.S. side of the border, and it's a place for housing migrants who are coming into the United States and don't have a place to stay. We started out with a little bit of introduction here on the right. Down here, you'll see some of the housing that's at La Providencia, La Pasado. This is a building that's been recently built. It was built by Mennonite Disaster Service volunteers, so we were kind of surprised when we saw that. This is another building that was helped being constructed by Mennonite Disaster Service. This is kind of a community room or a community building. There are offices there. There's laundry facilities. There are kitchen facilities. There's a place where people can dine. You could take kids in there to help them learn, etc. One of the nice things for me is while the tour was supposed to be a learning tour, we did get to do some volunteer work. And here you see Kim and Barbara putting together a mount for a keyboard that will fit underneath a desk. So they got to get their hands dirty doing that. I also got to get my hands dirty by building the desk that mount goes in. When we started out, there was just a pile of boxes. And we did not know any of the organization of what went into this desk. So we just started tearing boxes open. Finally, we found a set of instructions. And we're able to kind of then fit together all the pieces. So I and another guy who was actually not on our tour sorry, I hit the wrong button here. Got to put together this desk. And the keyboard drawer goes underneath it. Here again, you can see some of the housing. This is the older part of the housing. You can see the mosquito netting. This is one of those new cabins built by Mennonite Disaster Service people. And this, again, is an outside view of that. For me, going to this place was calming from the day before because it was no longer in the city. It was out in the country. I grew up out in the country. And it just felt like a breath of fresh air compared to what we had been in the day before. After we finished at La Posada, we went to Customs and Border Patrol. And these are just pictures of inside the station. Inside the station, we were taken into this room. We were given about a half an hour to an hour presentation about what Customs and Border Patrol does. And then we were actually fortunate enough to tour the whole station. I don't want to go into a lot of details there, but there is something that we should probably all be aware of publicly. And I could have done this later this afternoon with questions, but I think for live stream people, it might be helpful for them to see this, hear this. So Customs and Border Patrol has this thing called apprehensions, and I want to talk about what an apprehension is. But before I do that, I have to do another explanation. Laurie already talked about the CBP app. So if somebody wants to come into the United States, they're supposed to get on their phone this CBP app. They enter their personal information into that app, like name, age, where they're from, why they're coming into the United States. Do they have somebody in the United States that they have contact with? Do they have a sponsor there, etc.? So that goes into the app. The information there goes to Customs and Border Patrol. They then decide, we were given no clue about how that happens, whether somebody's going to get an appointment to actually talk to them at some point. So, as Laurie hinted at, I think they put in their information, they send that, they check every day to see if they've gotten an appointment. It may be months till they get an appointment. I don't know the longest time that somebody had, but. So once they get the appointment, they have an appointment time that they're supposed to contact Border Patrol, which means they show up on the bridge. They're not still in the United States, they're still in Mexico until that appointment time, and then when the appointment time comes, they're led into the United States and talk to somebody at Customs and Border Patrol. We did not see any of that happening, so I can't describe that. From there, various things can happen. But one of the things that will happen eventually
is they get an appointment to have a judge hear their case for asylum. Now, those appointments at judges may be in different parts of the country. For example, if somebody had a sponsor, say, in New York City, they may have an appointment with a judge in New York City to hear their case for asylum. Some of them may end up with appointments in the Rio Grande Valley, maybe if they don't have anybody to contact. To get asylum in the United States, there are strict rules about how you can get asylum. If you want to know the details, you can look that up. But essentially, you have to be threatened with violence by either, say, the government or the local police in your home country. So if you're just coming to the United States to get a better life, generally you will not be granted asylum. You have to demonstrate that you have threats to your life or your children's lives or something like that. So back to apprehensions. So anybody coming across with the CBP app, getting their appointment, that's counted as an apprehension. So I'm saying this because you may hear apprehension statistics reported in the news. The other way you can get an apprehension is if you do not go through that process, or maybe you've gone through the process and got tired of waiting and crossed the river. Most of the people crossing the river want to be stopped by Border Patrol after they cross. And that would be considered an apprehension. Now, it could be that if they cross that way, they're immediately deported back to Mexico. And so they sit in Mexico again, and then they try to cross again. That's another apprehension. So an apprehension is not somebody trying to get into the United States illegally, nor is it a count of how many people are trying to get into the United States, because some people are counted multiple times. Okay. So you get this appointment at a judge. You've got to show up at the judge and plead your case. One of the organizations that helps with pleading cases, at least in the South Texas area, is called ProBar. This organization gives legal representation to those seeking asylum in the United States for free. You probably can't see this diagram on the left very well, but it's about paths to legal relief. And over here you see our group in front of the ProBar building, and these are things they do. ProBar is sanctioned by the American Bar Association, so it's a an upstanding organization within the legal process. I think that's it. Thanks.
Tell us how many people get asylum. I forget.
So you can maybe Google statistics on this, but one of the statistics we heard is that probably 1% of those who appear for their court case get asylum in the United States.
So I have day 3, and day 3 consisted of a lot more organizations, well, a couple more organizations that have started grassroots, on the U.S. side and are helping. And it was just very interesting to me. It's always interesting to me and exciting to me how a lot of times during my life, all of a sudden I'll be reading somewhere, the Bible, another book, whatever, or I'll be listening to the radio, and something that corresponds to my life will pop up, and it just happens over and over. And while I was preparing for this, it happened again. I was reading in Exodus, and I'll just read you some of what I read. I am the Lord. I will bring you out. I will rescue you. I will redeem you. I will take you to myself. I will be your God. Now, I'm not trying to relate this to the Exodus. It's not the same situation at all. But what struck me with this was that God is saying he will work. He will rescue. He is paying attention. And at the same time, I was reading this book, Divine Gravity. We were asked to read it for yesterday's meeting for Ohio Conference. And right about the same time, I ran across this passage in her book. There is no way to draw near to God without embracing the great scandal at the center of God's heart, God's unreasonable fixation on rescuing everyone. Even our enemies are prized, beloved, counted among those for whom Jesus trades his own life. Paul writes to the early church, suffering at the hands of their neighbors, we aren't fighting against human enemies, but against rulers, authorities, forces of cosmic darkness, and spiritual powers of evil in the heavens. Humans can be taken captive, deceived, corrupted. Human beings can get played, but God is fighting to redeem every one of them. To be on God's side is to do likewise, to recognize no person as dispensable, as disposable, as an acceptable loss. The only form of power that evil is powerless against is the power of self-giving love. And those two things, it just tied together in my head that, God thousands of years ago was saying, I will rescue you, I will help you, I'm involved in your life. But, then when Jesus came, he took that over and eventually transferred it to us. He modeled, he taught over and over that we were to love our neighbors as ourselves. And when he was telling the parable of the Good Samaritan, when the lawyer asked, who is my neighbor? Jesus asked right back, who do you think the neighbor in my story was? And when the lawyer said, the man who showed mercy on the stranger, Jesus said, go and do likewise. And that was Wednesday for me, seeing these organizations that just grew up because they lived there and they saw a need. So, this day we went to Brownsville and we crossed across to Matamoros. This is just a mural that was on the wall on one of the streets of Brownsville. And the first thing we did was go and look at another wall. This was in Alice Wilson Hope Park, or anyway, in Brownsville, Texas. We've talked about this before. If you look at the top section, it's all razor wire. It's quite a tall fence wall by itself, but then there's razor wire at the top. Make sure no one even attempts to climb it. The posts are really quite thick. Okay. And this is the same wall on the right-hand side, and you can see there's the road, the Border Patrol Road, and then way in the background there's the Rio Grande. And what you can't see is the left-hand side. This is right on the side of the road. It's more razor wire, just embedded in the brush all along the way. And this is where we walked to get to the bridge. I forgot to say in the last picture, the bridge actually, maybe go back. Yeah, the bridge actually is over on the side. Yeah, there. So we were walking around to go to the bridge. We crossed over the river, and anyway, we crossed over the river, and then we came here, or maybe we hadn't crossed yet, whatever. We came to this corner, and we're going to talk more about this corner later, but there we met Pastor Abraham Barberi, who is the pastor of Ministeria Unimisión. And if you note, the left-hand side is corner in the United States. You can kind of see the bridge in the backward going over. And the right-hand side, we actually were in Mexico, and the third camp that we went to is behind there. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And the Rio Grande River is between the two. And Pastor Barberi is in both pictures. So here we've crossed the river, and now we're going up to cross the bridge. And one of the things that interested me about this crossing of the bridge was that we could just freely cross across. Mexico let us come in. We didn't have to show our passports. We just went. And on the way, both Abram and Becky were greeting people and talking with guards and just asking how they were doing, their lives. They go back and forth a lot, and they're very what's the word I want? Conscientious, but that's not the word. But anyway, they try very hard to build good relationships with people so that people know who they are and that they're there for good reason. Now we've come to the camp that I was talking about before. On the left-hand side, the picture on the left-hand side, that's a fire. This particular camp has porta pots, but I don't believe we saw running water anywhere. It's, I guess, a mud hole in the in the rainy season. There's no place to cook or wash up, and yet everybody looked really clean, and there was order, and that's a cooking fire. Laurie took that picture. We came around the corner, and there was the Rio Grande, and this is what you look at when you're in the camp and you're looking across to the United States. Not very welcoming. This picture, we had come into the camp, and Pastor Abraham also had a very good relationship with the people. He goes there all the time, ministers to them. And this man on the left came running up. Pastor, I got an appointment. I got an appointment this morning. He was so excited. What I didn't realize was that it could be months until his appointment, but he got his appointment. The right-hand side, I forgot. The man in the back in this picture came over to us then and asked us to pray for him because he said it felt like we had good vibes because the other man had gotten an appointment right as we came into the camp. And we talked with him for quite a while. He had a 2-year-old son who you can't see there who played with his 2 little trucks while we were there. And the family had come from Venezuela. They had walked all the way from Venezuela with their 2-year-old son, he and his wife. And they came through the Darien Gap. Well, that was an education for me. Some of you who are more newsworthy than I am probably have heard of the Darien Gap. I had not. It is an area where there are no roads. It's basically jungle. There are mountains. There are rivers. There is a whole highway that could run through, and originally I guess they wanted to build a highway, but there are a lot of concerns about building a highway. They had found that some of the environment had been destroyed through some of the upper regions that they had done, and there are people groups that live in this jungle that it would disrupt their livelihood and their eating and whatever because the road coming through would destroy the environment around them. So that was one of the reasons that a road's never been built. Some of the other reasons are that they hope that will stop the spread of tropical diseases. I guess because people coming through could have them. I didn't really understand that, but and foot and mouth disease, they were hoping to stop that. They were hoping that by having no roads, that would help deter drug trafficking, cartels, violence that could occur because of that. And so there have been no roads built, but people you can go around it. It takes longer, but more and more, it used to be that very few people went through this because it was dangerous. Now, every year, more and more people go through it. And this family went through it with their son. It takes maybe 4 days to get through, 3, 4, 5 days to get through it. Generally, people can run out of water before that time, which is a concern. I'm not sure what you do then. But it's a dangerous place to be. There are robbers and criminals and violence within there, and assault and abuse against women and girls is known to be a problem. This next slide, the reason we're in a storage unit is because this organization was started by a small group of educators, teachers in the area, in the United States, who saw what was happening back in 2018 when the numbers were much, much higher and there was even less organization than now, and people were actually living on the bridges. They were just camped out on the bridges. And so these people, they just started bringing food to them every day. This small handful of people somehow gleaned food and brought it to them. And this organization has grown, but it's a place where they definitely will take volunteers. It's run, basically the person who really was instrumental is Andrea there. I wanted you to see a picture of Andrea and Kathy. And they're telling us about the organization before we're about to go down to look at it. Here we're on the corner of you can't really see it, but the bridge is very close to there. And Team Brownsville is the name of the organization. And Team Brownsville got a building on this corner. It's very, very small, which is why they house a lot of stuff in the storage unit, because they don't have space there. So they take donations and stuff and put them in the storage unit. But they're purposefully they're purposely located on this corner because across from it is the bus station. You can see that on the right-hand side, that area there. Is the bus station, and across another corner is the processing center where people who get appointments come to have the first screening done, and it's in the basement of a parking garage. So back several years ago, and I think still, people were processed, and if they were allowed to enter the United States, they basically were put out on the street, on the corner. And so for a while, there were people actually living at the bus stop in great numbers, which of course was an issue too. The numbers are down now, and now there are more helps, so that isn't happening. But they still are just like, let go, you're done now. So they have what they carried with them when they walked to the border, and that's what they have, and they're let go on the street. Next one, or wait. Oh yeah, I am. I think they intentionally took us at this time because they thought this might happen. I don't know if it happens the same day every day, but while we were there, some people were let go out of the basement. They came across the street looking very tired, weary, thoughtful. And they crossed the street and they went into Team Brownsville's little building. And while we were talking outside, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes later, they came back walking out, and each child had a toy, and they had some obvious supplies that they had been given. Team Brownsville now will help with trying to access them transportation to wherever they need to go to meet the judge. They will help them with their paperwork to make sure it's in order. They will give them instruction, because if there have been incidences that you can get online and read, if you come across the border and you're supposed to be someplace specific to meet a judge, you have to be there, you have to be on time, You have to have all your paperwork in order. And if you don't understand because you don't speak English or it hasn't been explained to you well enough or whatever, or if you just can't get there in time or you miss the appointment for some reason, you're instantly deported. So they help with the understanding of that and making sure that they will have, helping to make sure that they will have successful attempt, at least, to get asylum by doing those things for them. Right now, they're running a coat drive. If anybody's interested, they have coupled with a couple other organizations, one called Grannies for Help or something like that. It's very cute, in New York. And they're collecting coats because when they're let go, they have their shirts on their backs, basically, the clothing that they wore to come. And it's not coats. So if you're going somewhere like Minnesota or Cleveland or whatever, especially in the wintertime, you need something warmer. So they've been doing a coat drive. And for $20, you can click on the barcode thing, and you can send 70 pounds worth of coats to Team Brownsville, where they will be given out. Jim and I intend to do a box. We do not have 70 pounds of coat. We probably only have about 2. So if you are interested and would like to give a coat or have some around that haven't been used in a while, they're taking hopefully gently used, decent condition coats. So on to the 4th day. The 4th day, I learned something else, and that is that, we have the border, the actual border where we crossed, but the entire United States has 100 miles into the country from the border is still considered to be a border enforcement zone. So the gold section of the right-hand map, it's all enforcement zone, and if you look, you see we live in an enforcement zone. The left-hand side is Texas, and this is also the 100 miles into Texas that's part of the border zone. And on the 4th day, we traveled an hour into Texas. Every road, every major road that goes through has another checkpoint that has to be gotten through. You have to have your paperwork and everything in order to get through it. So those who do intend to come in as undocumented people and who cross the river haven't made it out of the woods yet. They have to go 100 miles on foot to get past the Border Patrol. And so you can imagine they're not going to go the roads. They're going to go outside of the roads. And this part of Texas is 1,000-acre ranches, cattle ranches. And so they have to go through 100 miles of cattle ranch in order to try to skirt the border patrol, the border crossings, what's called stations. Sorry, and this is the land that they have to go through. There's acres and acres where there is no one, and there is no water. So for a while now, I'm not sure how long, maybe Laurie or Jim know, but for a while now there's been a project, also grassroots, to attempt to get water for people. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Laurie's going to take over now.
So what you're looking at here is the South Texas Human Rights Center, and we have our shirts on today, all 3 of us. This is Pete's, that's why it's so big. This is located in Falfurrias, Texas, which is very near where the border crossing is that Kim was referring to. So I think they said there are 3 roads out of the Rio Grande Valley going north, and to pass through beyond the enforcement zone, you have to get through a border control station on one of these roads. And so in order to evade these, that's where people end up out in these ranch land, scrubland, desert-like places trying to get around these stations where you have to show your passport and stuff. So South Texas Human Rights Center exists because of this. So if you look at the picture on the right, you'll see Abram, one of the directors, and with him is Eddie Canales, and he is the one that started the South Texas Human Rights Center. They do a number of things. I will jump to the water since we were just talking about that. These tanks are put throughout these scrublands and ranches on places where, if ranchers let them. They're placed there so that people traveling through can have the water so that they don't die. And many people do die in this area, not just in Texas, but all across Arizona. Those all have also deserts and stuff. And so there's actually something in the tank that sits up about this high, and then they fill up gallon jugs of water and place them on top of, so they're not reaching all the way down in there, but these things are not filled with water. Gallon jugs of water are put in these and placed throughout the area where they're allowed. And that's actually one of the things Abram said is that he helps Eddie put those out. If you stay afterward, there's actually, we're not showing it, but I can give you the name of a point of view documentary that was on PBS about this South Texas Human Rights Center and what they do. It's really interesting. So you can see it's just a small storefront, very tiny. And we're in here hearing about what's happening. There are 3 staff. I told you about Eddie. There is Vanessa, and she does intakes on the phone, gathering information from worried families about immigrants who are missing. So a lot of times the people who are traveling through the desert have phones, and they may be struggling, they can't make it, so they're calling their family and saying, I'm out here in the desert, can you send help? And so these are the people they call, because often 9/11 isn't helpful. Can't tell where they are, or just, we heard some stories just that they weren't that interested in helping a lot of times. So, I'm sorry? Oh, right, so she was saying that some of the 9/11 people who are taking information don't speak Spanish, or say they don't when the people call in who are lost out in the desert. And so the other person on staff is Nora. You'll see a picture of her in a minute. She used to be the justice of peace in this town and had to act as a coroner. She was the one that would have to go out and say that there was a dead body found and stuff. She has since then come over to work for the South Texas Human Rights Center. I think one of the things that was interesting to me was that they said they get quite a bit of support from their community, which I didn't know if that, sometimes people feel very strongly the other way. So now Nora is instrumental in trying to keep people alive, right, by helping locate them. And this is not just for this little area. They get calls from Arizona, New Mexico, and California, because at this point, I think they made it sound like they're the only one that does this. So there's a lot more that we can tell you about this that is complicated, and I won't go into it right now. But yeah, so this was really moving to see another little grassroots organization that's making a difference.
one of the things that we did while we were there is hold a memorial service. You'll see me on the left pounding in 3 crosses. On the right, you see Abram with Nora. Nora is on the left there, beside the crosses. Those 3 crosses represent the 3 people that have been known to have died in the scrubland this calendar year already, as you know, essentially through January. These 3 crosses are planted in a courthouse lawn. So in the background there, you see the courthouse. These crosses are in the lawn and will stay there for the year. As I said, we held a memorial service there. The next thing you're going to see is a clip of that memorial service. It's not very good, but you can see what's going on at least. We are in this memorial service reading the names of people who have died trying to get past through the scrubland. And the people's names that we're reading are not just this year, they are in recent years.
Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied.
Cornelia, Calderon, DeFranco, Costa Rica, blessed are the merciful, for they will receive.
Had to have a technology breach somewhere.
Here it is.
Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness.
Okay, so you got an idea of what it was like. We were standing around these 3 crosses.
Right across from directly across from
This is, yeah, the South Texas Human Rights Center is back here behind us across the street. Okay. Kim.
These are the 3 names that Laurie, Jim, and I read. Mine's on the bottom. Lillian Beatrice Sequeira Flores, who was from Salvador. Her story was that she was trying to get to relatives, I believe, in Colorado, and was into the scrubland and ran out of water. And so she desperately called her family, and they called the Human Rights Center. And so people began to look for her, and they came from Colorado and tried to go in. And it's a ranch, it's private property, so they couldn't get in. But the Human Rights Center was also making attempts, but they did not get to her in time. And so she actually came upon a watering area for the cattle and drank from that and died of drinking the water.
From the South Texas Human Rights Center, we went to a place, the home actually, of Kevin and Caitlin McNamara. They are sponsoring what's called the 13-2 project. 13:2 is a verse in Hebrews that talks about whatever you did to one of those, whatever you showed hospitality to one of those, you may have been entertaining angels. So Kevin and Caitlin have an interesting story. They were in Colorado. They were living in Colorado. They had some kind of meeting with their church, and their pastor challenged them, asking them to think about the question of whether they were doing what they felt they were called to do. And so Kevin and Caitlin went home and didn't know exactly what God was calling them to do. I don't know exactly. It was a couple months, I think, that they stewed on this question and realized that they were called to being hospitable. And so one of the ways of being hospitable is to be hospitable to those crossing the border. So they just upped, sold everything, moved to Texas, bought a house, really nice house. In Texas, still not sure what they're supposed to do. Some people have the ability to work even if you're not in the place you were living. because we can work online now these days. I believe that's Kevin's situation. So he was still working. They had this place. They weren't quite sure what they were supposed to do. So they were talking to people. And so somebody said to them, "What about that shed you have on your property? What's going on with that shed?" Well, they said, "We're not using it for anything." And they said, "Well, that's what we need. We need a shed to put supplies in." So you can see the supplies that are in this shed, and they're all over the place, coming from different places. And Laurie is going to tell us about one of those, or two of those supplies.
I also just thought of something when you were talking, Jim. Kevin does something with computers. And so I think all those tags you see he knows exactly what's there and when it goes and when it comes, and he's right on top of things. What was interesting was, as I was looking at the boxes, I saw boxes with the name Harvest Call on them. I don't know if any of you are familiar, but Harvest Call is an apostolic relief organization. And so not only did I see Harvest Call, but I saw Sterling, Ohio. And the Harvest Call building is right down the street from where I work on East Pleasant Home Road. It's on Pleasant Home right by 585. They have a very big building where blood drives and all kinds of things. But anyway, it was kind of fun to see that. And also, if any of you ever see the ads for Bombas socks, there were boxes of Bombas socks there. Bombas really does give socks. So anyway, that was inspiring to me.
And that just made me remember something. So as the end, toward the end here, we're finally going to be done. Kevin also is trying to develop a way to an app for teaching language, kind of like Duolingo maybe. He's doing something with that. So it was something very creative that was going to help people learn to speak English.
So if I want to kind of summarize what you've seen today, we've tried to concentrate on how MCC, Mennonite Central Committee, is working with partners in the South Texas area. This afternoon, if you want to ask us more detailed questions about politics, policy, etc., we'll be happy to try to answer those as best we know how. But what I learned was that you don't have to have grandiose plans. You can be an individual who sees a humanitarian need and tries to fill that gap, and that can be the start of something. Pastor Abraham, who took us across to Matamoros, I don't know exactly what he was doing before, but he was crossing the bridge every now and then in his ministry. And one time he was crossing the bridge, and there was a guy sitting on the bridge waiting to get into the United States. He said, "Where are you from?" And I believe the guy was from the Ukraine. Is that right? I think it was. So, and it was cold, and he didn't have a coat. And so Pastor Abraham called up somebody and said, can I get a coat? And he got a coat, and that turned into a bigger ministry to those on the Mexico side of the border. As Kim said, Team Brownsville, started by a group of teachers who saw a need to serve people who were coming into the country. Kevin and Caitlin, hey, we got a storage shed, use it. So very simple things can be done to help people. And if you feel that call to help people, just heed that call. Laurie or Kim, you want to say anything else in terms of? Thank you.
Us so much to think about this morning. How incredible to have a firsthand account like this. We're going to sing the words that are in your bulletin, In Christ there is no east or west. In Christ there is no east or west, in him no south nor north, but one great fellowship of love throughout the whole wide earth. In his the people of the faith, whether nomads may be, all children of the living God are surely kin to me.
Are there any announcements?
Hi, this is Amy. Couple of events coming up. I know we've got a couple of weeks yet, but I wanted to say something so that you can be thinking about the Palm Sunday when we have the 5 churches gathering here. I need 1 or 2 volunteers to help me with some meal prep ideas. And then for the Easter breakfast, we do the carry-in breakfast, you know, kind of like a potluck breakfast, but we always have 6 or 7 casseroles, and I need volunteers to make those casseroles. I know we have plenty of time. You can get with me on that later, but I just wanted to give everybody a heads up and say something about that now.
This is Jim. I'm reporting as a conference delegate. We had our Ohio Mennonite Conference gathering Friday and Saturday. Jacob, Kim, and I were there. We voted on a name change. That passed. I don't remember the count on that, but it was probably close to unanimous. Then we also voted on changes to the Constitution. And all of those changes, which I presented last week, passed. When I presented last week, there was this confusion a little bit about the wording that would go into the Constitution about the current mission emphasis, and it's the words gather, equip, and send that are going in, not the current focus. Actually, that was an unintentional thing. They didn't intend for us to think that. There was also a vote on the strategic plan, and it passed. And all of these things passed with almost unanimous votes.
This is Katie Miller. Just a quick reminder, I made an announcement last week as well about the Comforter Bash happening this coming weekend. There are actual times in the bulletin this week, so you don't have to show up when I'm volunteering. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a fun event just to see people throughout the community gather to come together to finish these comforters. Thanks.
I guess I'll also take this opportunity to remind you that after the service, we have a meal, lots of food, and a short video that I think you would all find really interesting, and about the Borderland. And then, you know, if you want more information, we'd be glad to answer questions, and we can tell you more in detail about anything that you found that you would like more information about. Oh yeah, please, visitors, anyone, please stay. So, okay, and the blessing. May God bless you with a restless discomfort about easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that you may seek truth boldly and love deep within our hearts. May God bless you with holy anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you may work tirelessly for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless you with the gift of tears to shed with all who suffer from pain, rejection, and starvation, so that you may reach out to bring comfort and transform pain into joy. May God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you really can make a difference in the world, so that you are able, with God's grace, to do what others claim cannot be done.